Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 2023 is a game that has been criticized to no end. From a campaign that is almost universally hated due to how poorly written it is, to a multiplayer that has less innovation than any other COD game in every aspect. However, there is one mode in this game that didn't get the same level of criticism as those two modes, and that's the Zombies mode. When it comes to the reception that Zombies gets in any other Call of Duty, normally it's either received really well by the majority, or received really poorly by the majority. However, Modern Warfare 3 might be the only exception to this, as it is by far the most divisive Zombies mode in the series. The reason for this is that the mode caters to a completely different target audience, and that audience happened to be bigger than a lot of people expected. A lot of these newer fans have either never played or never even enjoyed Zombies from the previous titles, and on the other hand, a lot of the older fan base were in complete disbelief that anyone enjoyed this mode at all. As you may have guessed from the title, I do not like this game, but it's not for the reason that you might expect. Personally for me, I don't mind if Treyarch wants to experiment with the new type of zombies if it means we get something new and fresh. However, I also think that it shouldn't be prioritized over the traditional gameplay that people have loved for years. And even if they want to disregard tradition, I think we can all agree that if they want to experiment with something new, the very least they can do is try to develop the concept as much as possible. The problem with Modern Warfare 3 is that it does neither of these things. It's been 9 months since the release of this game, and as time went on, the amount of content this game was releasing got less and less. Not only that, but each edition this game got had less creativity than the last. Combine that with the shallow and generic story, as well as no new map releases the entire year, you can't help but get the impression that the only reason this mode was ever made was to inflate the price of a game that was supposed to be an expansion pack for the last game. Before I go any further, I would like to clarify that you are allowed to play whatever you want, and if you actually enjoy this game and the pixels on your screen make your brain do the happy, then that's completely fine. This is a video about my experience with Modern Warfare 3 Zombies and why the pixels on my screen does not make my brain do the happy. So, without further ado, let's get on with this video. Let's start off with something that I don't usually do, and that is explaining how the game works. It's important that I first go over everything that you can do in this game, as well as the utilities that you can use to properly explain the fundamental issues that this game has. I also want everyone to keep in mind that most of the stuff I'm going to be talking about in this section is related to the game's state at launch. Everything else that happens later on in the game's life cycle, like the unstable rift and all of the dark ethers, will be talked about in the next section. Regardless, this is going to be a very long segment of the video, so strap yourself in. As many of you know, Modern Warfare 3 Zombies does not have a round-based mode, so how does it treat difficulty? Modern Warfare 3's only Zombies map, Urzikstan, is sectioned into 3 zones where each zone is more difficult than the last. You first spawn in Tier 1, or the low threat zone. This is the outer circle of the map, and here is where you're going to be dealing with essentially round 5 to 10 zombies. Next up after that is Tier 2, or the medium threat zone. In this zone, you'll essentially be dealing with around 20 to 30 zombies that spawn a lot more frequently. Finally, we have the hardest part of the map, which is Tier 3, or the high threat zone. In this zone, you'll essentially be dealing with around 50 zombies, where most of the difficulty comes from how many zombies the game can spawn at once. Your goal throughout the match is to collect resources from the low and medium threat zone to be able to play in the high threat zone. The resources that you are looking for are what you'd expect from a zombies mode, like perks and Pack-a-Punch. But other resources come from DMZ, like the large rucksack that allows you to hold more items in your backpack. You can find all of these resources in multiple ways, like looting chests and caches that are spread throughout the map, killing special enemies like manglers, and even just finding them randomly in the middle of nowhere. Like for example, in this clip here, I find a quick revive can in the fucking bleachers of a football stadium. You can also spend points to get some stuff you need. You have your typical zombie stuff like wall weapons, mystery box, unlocks perks and Pack-a-Punch, but you can also spend your points on a buy station to get certain items like kill streaks. Speaking of points, the point system in this game works like the Outbreak point system, where the amount of points that you can get from zombies is abysmal. And like Outbreak, the main way you get points is through objectives and certain side objectives. However, the way that objectives work in this game do work differently than Outbreak. In that mode, you are given a random objective each round that you are forced to complete in order to progress. However, in Modern Warfare 3, you are allowed to pick whatever objective you want to progress. Throughout the map, there are contracts that will be marked with a certain emblem that corresponds to one of 8 objectives that you can complete. The difficulty of the objective depends on which threat zone you pick the contract from. Completing any of these objectives will give you 2,000 points if it's a low threat zone contract, 3,000 points if it's a medium threat zone contract, and 5,000 points if it's a high threat zone contract. Along with these points, you'll also get a reward rift that gives you random loot that ranges from perks to self-revives to ether wrenches that increase your weapon's rarity, and much more. Also, this might be pretty obvious, but the chances of you getting a good reward from the reward rift increases depending on which zone you complete the contract from. Now that we've explained how contracts work, let's talk about the contracts themselves, starting with the Outlast contract. The objective in this contract is to go to a random area that the game marks for you and activate a holdout sequence. You'll be asked to stay here for about 90 seconds where you'll be constantly swarmed with zombies. And if you're doing this contract in either the medium or the high threat zone, you'll have a chance of getting special enemies. Next is the weapon stash contract, which is essentially the exact same thing as the last contract, but with a few differences. This contract lasts a bit longer than the Outlast contract, but the zombie spawns aren't nearly as oppressive and you can actually leave the holdout area at any time. You'll only start losing progress to the contract if you ever go too far away from the building and not the actual holdout, which does make this contract easier, but it takes a lot more time. Next up is the Spore contract, where you have to go to a random area that the game marks for you and pick up inhibitors from this box. You have to throw an inhibitor by a spore and let it do its thing until the spore turns red. From there, you can destroy the spore, and you have to do that with 5 other spores. Once you destroy all 6 spores, the contract will be completed. Next up, we have the Escort contract. When activating this contract, the helicopter will airdrop a rover that you have to escort. Throughout this process, the rover will periodically stop to extract energy. When that happens, a massive amount of zombies will spawn and start attacking the rover, so you'll have to both escort and defend the rover at the same time until it eventually reaches its destination. Out of every contract, this one is by far the most difficult one to complete, especially in the higher threat zones. And honestly, it's just not worth all of the trouble. You get the exact same reward in every other contract, so there's no point in doing this one. On the other hand, we have the Bounty contract, which happens to be the most popular contract in this game. Activating a Bounty contract will spawn a high value target that will be marked on the map, and you have to kill said target to complete the contract. The game will pick one of 4 special enemies that can spawn randomly in the medium and high threat zones, as well as specific situations in the low threat zone. In the low threat zone, the bounty will either be a Mangler or a Mimic. In the medium threat zone, the Disciple will be added in that pool, and finally in the high threat zone, the Mega Abomination will be added into that pool. The HVT version of these special enemies have a lot more health, and as you're fighting the HVT, zombies will start spawning around you to help it out. Once the bounty is killed, the contract will be completed. Next up is the Ethereum Extractor contract. The game will give you a limited amount of time to defuse enemy rockets that contain Ethereum. In the low threat zone, you have to defuse 3 rockets, and in the medium threat zone, you have to defuse 5 rockets. But something you may have noticed while I was talking about this contract is I mentioned the word enemy. What do I mean by enemy? Well, the enemy in this case is actual soldiers with guns. As for the contract itself, each rocket is heavily guarded by mercs, so you have to kill them first before defusing them. Side note, you will get enemy reinforcements if you don't do this contract quick enough. So overall, this contract is pretty quick, but it's also really cancerous. But nowhere near as cancerous as our next contract. The ground station contract has you collect data and transmit it using a computer that will be marked on the map. While this data is being transmitted, mercs will spawn nearby and try to destroy the computer, and you have to defend this computer until the data is fully transmitted. Not only do you have to defend this computer from mercs that can throw grenades at you as well as harass you with the riot shield, but the computer that you're trying to defend has the same durability as American walls. Once you complete this defense, which by the way lasts almost 3 fucking minutes, you complete the contract. Finally, we have the cargo delivery contract. The contract has you drive a nearby cargo truck to a location that is marked on the map. While you are driving the truck, an enemy helicopter will chase you down and try to shoot you with a machine gun. You are supposed to avoid this helicopter, but the damage that it does is so negligible that you could pretty much ignore it. Once you reach your destination, you give the cargo to a friendly helicopter and the contract ends. In addition to these contracts, there's also other side objectives that you can do around the map. First up is the Ether Nest side objective. Ether nests are found all over the map, and they are small areas that are infected with spores. To complete the side objective, you have to destroy every single spore in the area. If you go into an ether nest without a gas mask, the spores inside will slowly damage you, and the only way to regenerate is if you go outside of the area. This can be avoided if you have a gas mask that you can either find around the map, or you can just buy out of a buy station. Anyway, once you complete the side objective, you'll get access to ether chests that can give you loot. Next up is the infected stronghold, which is the exact same objective as the ether nest, except it's bigger, there's more spores to shoot, and there's more ether chests. And then there's all the merc related side objectives. There's the merc camp, which is a small area with a few mercs, a counter UAV, and sometimes a sentry gun. The merc stronghold, which is a building filled with mercs, and the only way to access this area is via keycard. You can get this keycard from either a buy station for 2000 points, or you can just clear a merc camp and get the keycard from there. Finally, we have the fortress, which is only accessible via keycard that you get from a merc stronghold. The fortress is a massive base that is filled with troops, kill streaks, suppression mines, and a lot of other dumb shit. Leading this base is a warlord that has a lot of health and a fire shotgun. Once you defeat the warlord inside the fortress, you will get a reward rift. The last type of objective that you can do on this game is story missions. At the launch of this game, there were 3 story missions that you were able to complete, but you had to unlock them first. To unlock these missions, you had to do a bunch of random challenges like kill zombies with sentry guns, clear an infested stronghold, raid a fortress, and so many other types of challenges that you had to complete. Whenever a story mission is unlocked, a red marker will spawn on the map, and interacting with it will send a helicopter that will take you out of the match and put you in a separate match either by yourself or with other teammates that went with you. I'll talk about these missions in depth later on in the video when I'm talking about the story of the mode. For now though, let's talk about their gameplay. The first 2 story missions essentially act like campaign missions but with zombies, and the third mission is essentially the same thing, but there's a boss fight in the end. The boss fight is against a massive worm, which was by far the hardest part of the game when it released. The worm has a lot of health, and it has a variety of attacks that are really difficult to dodge. It has a body slam attack, a laser attack that will completely shred your armor, the ability to burrow into the ground and try to fucking eat you, and most annoyingly, shoot a bunch of purple orbs that will fly around the place and hit you constantly. In order to get rid of these orbs, you have to shoot them down, but the thing is, not only are they insanely fast, but they have a ridiculously small hitbox. It's like you're trying to swat a swarm of mosquitoes that are high on coke, and while you're trying to swat these coked up mosquitoes, you have this fucker ready to laser you at a moment's notice. Honestly, I don't enjoy this fight due to how annoying the attacks are. It's not really difficult, it's just really irritating. Not only that, but it's worsened by how long it takes to unlock it. You have to complete every single story mission in order to get to this fight. I guess there is a silver lining, which is that you can go to this boss fight at any match as long as you unlock the story mission, but other than that, this is not really a fight that I want to go back and play. As you can see, the variety of objectives that this game has is immense. But what about the variety of weapons? Out of every single game in the series, Modern Warfare 3 has the highest amount of weapons. Currently, the game has over 130 weapons, which is excessive to say the least. If you've watched my Black Ops 1 video, you might remember me saying that I wasn't a fan of how weapon variety was completely diluted in Cold War Zombies, since you can spawn in with the most powerful weapon in the game, and there would be no other reason to get any other weapon, since the most powerful weapon in Cold War is also the best point weapon, as well as the best boss killer, and so on. In Modern Warfare 3 though, this aspect of the game has been improved a lot. You can still spawn in with whatever you want, but since the general gameplay in this mode is a lot more varied than a regular round-paced map, you can pick out certain weapons to fit a specific playstyle. There does exist all-purpose weapons in this game, like assault rifles and SMGs, but they aren't the best in a specific category. For example, the RGL isn't really good at taking out boss zombies, but it's an incredible crowd control weapon. Contrastly, shotguns aren't good at taking out hordes, but they're good at doing single target damage against bosses. bosses. Overall, the weapon variety is definitely an improvement over Cold War's weapon variety, but I would still rather them pick out certain weapons and design them around the mode instead of just throwing every single gun in the game to the mode without much thought. Now that we're done with weapon variety, let's talk about the upgrade system. Modern Warfare 3 weapons can be upgraded in two ways. The first type of upgrade you can do is the 3 levels of Pack-a-Punch. The first Pack-a-Punch level will cost 5,000 points and it will increase the damage, ammo, and magazine size as well as give some weapons special abilities. The double barrel shotgun, for example, will go from semi-automatic to being 2-round burst when Pack-a-Punched. The second Pack-a-Punch level costs 10,000 points and can only be done in either the medium or the high threat zone. And the last level of Pack-a-Punch will cost 15,000 points and can only be done in the high threat zone. These two levels of Pack-a-Punch will only increase your damage as well as refill your ammo, but nothing more. The same thing can be said about our second upgrade method, which is the weapon rarity system. Increasing the weapon rarity of your weapon will only increase its damage and nothing more. The difference between these two upgrade systems is that the weapon rarity can only be increased with ether wrenches. The rarities from weakest to strongest are the common rarity, which is the weapon that you spawn with, the uncommon rarity, which can be acquired with a green ether wrench, the rare rarity, which is a blue wrench, epic rarity, which is a purple wrench, and legendary, which is a golden wrench. These wrenches can be found around the map or acquired via reward rift. There's a couple of things I want to mention about this, the first being that you can use any wrench at any time regardless of the rarity. For example, if you have a common rarity gun and a legendary ether tool, you can turn it from common rarity to legendary rarity immediately. Another thing I want to mention is that the weapons that you find around the map have certain rarities. For example, if you were to buy a wall weapon from either the medium or the low threat zone, you'll generally find the guns there to be either green or blue rarity. But if you were to go to the high threat zone, the wall weapons you'll find there are always either purple or gold rarity. The mystery box will give you a random rarity along with the gun that you get, and generally that rarity tends to get better the longer the game goes on. As for weapons that you find in chests and weapon stashes, the rarity tends to be completely random. Back when the game first came out, a lot of people would go to the high threat zone and get a gold gun from the wall because of how difficult it was to get legendary ether tools at the time. People don't do that as much anymore, but if you're someone that doesn't have easy access to legendary ether tools, this is a really good strategy. On the topic of things that you don't have easy access to, let's talk about the wonder weapons. Modern Warfare 3 launched with 3 wonder weapons, the ray gun, wonder waff, and the new wonder weapon, the Scorcher. The ray gun, as always, is really good at taking out massive hordes of zombies. It's a bit jarring that the fire rate is much slower than usual, but other than that, it's a pretty good gun. Next up, we have the wonder waff. The wonder waff shoots an electrical bolt that can kill up to 10 zombies, just like the other wonder waffs. But unlike the other wonder waffs, you don't have to be conservative with your ammo. In this game, zombies can drop ammo and they do very consistently, and even if they don't, there's a lot of ammo caches that are always around you. If you're doing an objective that spawns a ridiculous amount of zombies like an escort, this thing is really useful. However, what is by far the best wonder weapon in this game, no contest, is the Scorcher. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but the Scorcher is genuinely like top 10 favorite wonder weapons for me. The Scorcher is an infinite ammo wonder weapon that has 2 firing modes. The first one shoots a massive beam of plasma, and the second one allows you to fly. The beam of plasma that you shoot with the Scorcher instantly kills any zombie. If you fully charge this firing mode, the beam of plasma will linger for a bit. This lingering beam of plasma will act as a trap of sorts where any zombie that touches it will instantly die, making it already one of the strongest weapons in this game. But that's not the reason why I, as well as many other people, love this thing. The Scorcher's second firing mode will launch you into the air, and the more you charge this firing mode, the higher you'll go. Since this game allows you to use a parachute if you're high enough in the air, the Scorcher allows you to exploit this. This significantly increases your mobility, but it doesn't end there. There's a bug with the Scorcher that allows you to consistently shoot yourself up in the air and make you fly even faster than you already do. I mean, just look at the gameplay, it speaks for itself. Just look at how fast I am. For how much time you spend going from one place to another in this game, having a weapon like this significantly accelerates the pace of the game. The only problem I have with this weapon and every other wonder weapon in general is that it is really difficult to get them. Whether you want to get a wonder weapon out of the box or get it out of a reward rift, the drop rate is astronomically low. Before the release of Season 3 Reloaded, the only way to get guaranteed wonder weapons is through schematics, which I will talk about later. But after the Season 3 Reloaded update, you're now guaranteed to get a wonder weapon out of the fortress. These are the only 2 reliable ways to get wonder weapons in this game, and honestly, I don't think it's enough. If someone does not have the schematics for the wonder weapons or isn't isn't powerful enough to raid a fortress, then the majority of their playtime in this game will consist of them not using the wonder weapons. It's unfortunate that there isn't any more reliable ways to get wonder weapons in this game, but they are incredibly powerful when you do get to use them. The last part of the weapons that I want to cover is the weapons that you can get out of the buy station. There's the sentry gun, which is really good at alleviating pressure from objectives. The murder strike and the precision airstrike are really good at creating a temporary area of denial, killing every single zombie and special enemy in their radius. Then there's the juggernaut suit, which gives you armor that makes you invincible and also gives you a really overpowered minigun. Then there's the two pieces of equipment, which are the monkey bomb and the Casimirs. The monkey bombs are pretty self-explanatory, but I guess if you don't know what they are, you throw them, they distract the zombies, and after a few seconds it goes boom. The Casimir, on the other hand, will create a black hole that will pull all zombies in its radius towards it and kills them instantly. All of these weapons are incredibly powerful, and all of them are pretty fun to use as well. Their drawback is that if you don't get them out of your reward drift, you have to buy them for a very expensive fee. The sentry gun and cluster mine cost 2,000 points, and everything else costs 5,000 points with the exception of the juggernaut, which costs 10,000 points. But anyway, that is pretty much everything about the weapons in this game. As you can see, every single aspect of Modern Warfare 3 Zombies is varied, from the types of objectives you can complete, to the way that you approach them, to the weapons that you can use, and so on. One of the best parts about this mode is that you're never forced to do any objective to progress. For example, if you happen to hate every single thing that is Merc related in this game, whether that's their objectives or their bases, then you don't have to storm their bases or do their objectives. Or let's say that you want to only do one specific objective and not any other objective. Well, you can do that. There are hundreds of ways that you can play a certain match in this game, and while some of them might not be the most ideal strategy that you can do, the game never forces you to do anything that you don't want to. Another thing I like is that there's some objectives that you can do even if you're completely unprepared. For example, the cargo delivery contract and the weapon stash contract can be done without killing a single zombie, so you are able to do either contract in any threat zone and get helpful resources. Another good thing is that even if you manage to get the worst rewards possible from a reward drift, the points that you get out of the contract are valuable enough that you never feel like you're wasting time doing the contract. All of these aspects create a mode that gives you a variety of unique encounters and situations that you can freely approach in whatever way you want. It would be a shame if they introduced a mechanic that completely flies in the face of all of that freedom and variety, right? In each match of Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, a purple circle, known as the Storm Circle, will spawn in a random area of the map. Players that enter the circle without a gas mask will start taking damage in a similar way to an ether nest. Since you can't get rid of the circle in any way, staying in it for too long will eventually kill you. Now, normally, the storm is completely irrelevant to the player's experience as it can be completely ignored, at least for most of the match. 45 minutes after the match starts, this circle will keep expanding until it takes over the entire map, which takes 15 minutes. And all players are forced to go to one of the exfil markers around the map to end the match. So essentially, you're only allowed to play 1 hour at most, and unless you exfil beforehand, you'll die. The idea of a time limit in a mode like Call of Duty Zombies, where gameplay had scaling difficulty, was completely unheard of. And what's worse is that the time limit that was added is incredibly short. If you start the game from scratch, getting all of the resources needed to comfortably play in the high threat zone requires a lot of time and tens of thousands of points. And while it is possible to get all of these resources for free, it will most likely take you 25 to 40 minutes to get all of these things, and that's if you're an experienced player that has a couple days playtime. By the time you get everything you need, you'll only have a short amount of time to do any of the tier 3 contracts. And if you're a new player, you'll most likely never go to the tier 3 zone in the first few matches. The time limit completely erodes most of the freedom because it doesn't allow players to play at their own pace. You have to play every match like it's a speedrun, otherwise you'll never get to experience the highlight of the mode. This is where the game's extraction mechanic comes in. Whenever you come across any resources that you can equip, like perks and ether wrenches, you can either choose to activate the item or store it in your inventory. If you choose to store these items into your inventory, then you can exfil with them and they'll be stored in your acquisitions tab. Side note, any weapon that you pick up in the match, like wall weapons, will be be stored in your contraband stash if you exfil with them. The exception to this are wonder weapons, where they have to be in a wonder weapon case, which is available in reward rifts. As I mentioned earlier, to exfil you have to go to one of the exfil markers around the map, and you can do this at any point in the match. The main gameplay loop of Modern Warfare 3 is that you complete objectives in the first 2 zones, store some of the rewards that you get from completing the objectives, and then use those rewards in the next match to skip some of the progression. So for example, you can store a raw Ethereum crystal which pack-a-punches your weapon once, take it to the next match, and start the game with a pack-a-punched gun. This both saves 5,000 points and removes the need to do any contracts in the low threat zone, thus saving you time that you can now use on objectives in the higher threat zones. The more games you play, the more time you'll have to complete the much harder and more rewarding objectives, and you'll theoretically get to a point where you are strong enough to immediately start the match doing tier 3 objectives. The idea behind this mode is that instead of having the entire experience in one match like a regular zombies map, the experience is unified throughout every match, and dying in this game is a much bigger punishment as you'll lose what could be a dozen matches worth of progress. This system adds tension in every match, and it forces you to be smart with your positioning and timing, as one mistake can result in a game over. The problem with this idea is that due to your progress being cut short by the timer, getting the resources from the lower threat zones becomes a lot more time consuming, tedious, and frustrating. It goes without saying, but Urzikstan is a fucking massive map, and due to that, a lot of time spent on getting set up is taken up by downtime. Contracts spawn in random locations that are generally far away from each other, so you'll have to spend a portion of time just running to the contract, and then after activating it, you'll have to spend more time running to the marked location by the contract, and after that's done, you'll go running to another contract, and so on. It initially doesn't seem like a ton of wasted time when you first start playing, but when you play multiple matches in a row, and each match's progress is cut short due to a time limit, that wasted time really adds up quickly. It is especially bad whenever you don't have a vehicle, a scorcher, or the ability to jump from a high elevation to glide with your parachute, and all you can do is run at an infuriatingly slow speed. Further adding on to this is that the rewards that you get from contracts are completely random, and most of the time you won't be able to get enough resources to make a big difference in progression next match. I wouldn't have as much of a problem with all of these things if the time limit wasn't as short as it is. If the time limit was increased by at least half an hour, the time it would take to get the resources for the high threat zone would be cut down significantly. However, the solution that they had in mind for this problem was the complete opposite of that, and that comes in a feature that guarantees strong acquisitions called schematics. Schematics are occasionally given to you when you complete contracts or some of the story missions, and they allow you to create an acquisition in the main menu instead of acquiring it in-game. For example, I completed the Spore contract and got the Elemental Pop schematic. If I manage to exfil with this schematic, then I'll have the ability to make an Elemental Pop acquisition for free like this. Once you get a schematic once, you have the ability to make an infinite amount of acquisitions from that schematic. The only drawback is that each time you make an acquisition, you have to wait for a cooldown to use the schematic again. The schematics that the game had on launch were every single perk, every ether wrench except the gold rarity, raw and refined Ethereum crystals that upgrade your weapon to tier 1 and tier 2 pack-a-punch respectively, and finally wonder weapon cases for the raygun and the wonderwaff. The length of each of the schematics cooldown depends on the strength of the schematic. For example, perks can be crafted once every 3 hours, refined Ethereum crystals can be crafted once every 16 hours, and wonder weapon cases can be crafted once every 48 hours. Having any of the schematics, especially the strongest ones, can significantly speed up the pace of the game, and as a result give you more time to spend in the highest threat zone. Initially, schematics don't feel overpowered, as not only are you incapable of using them every match, but they are incredibly rare. However, once you get most of the schematics, this game's balance goes out of the window. Now look, Zombies has always had features that break the balance of the game. To give an example, the Gobblegums in Black Ops 3 allowed you to break the game in numerous ways. Gobblegums were broken, if not more broken than schematics, but the thing is, you can still complete every single Easter egg and go for high rounds in every single map without the use of Gobblegums, and it would not affect the game in a negative way. However, in the case of schematics, not using them does affect the gameplay in a negative way. Schematics allow you to spawn in powerful weapons without a single second of gameplay, and some of these items, like wonder weapon cases, are really hard to get. To give you guys an idea, I have multiple recorded games where I complete over 20 tier 3 contracts and I have not gotten a single wonder weapon case. Under normal circumstances, this wouldn't be that bad, as you can at least get any of these items eventually, whether that's from contracts or from getting the points to buy whatever you want. But since this game has a 45-minute timer, there's a massive chance that you can't get any of these these items even if you optimize the game to do the most amount of contracts possible. So to counteract this, you are heavily incentivized to use an overpowered feature that allows you to spawn in with perks, fully upgraded guns, and fucking wonder weapons. It is so incentivized, in fact, that some people would literally stop playing the game until their schematics are fully recharged and would only play a couple of games, then go back to waiting for their schematics to recharge because the gameplay loop is that tedious. I actually used to do this a lot when the game first came out. Back when the game first came out, I was mostly playing multiplayer because that was my preferred way of leveling up weapons, and in that process I also wanted to get Interstellar for Warzone. While I was doing that grind, I was farming acquisitions in the process, so what I would do is before I start my first match of multiplayer, I would go to zombies and then make a refined Ethereum crystal acquisition and then go back to multiplayer. I filled up my entire stash with that and I didn't play the game once. You are not supposed to be rewarded for not playing the game at all, but that is what schematics do. But again, this system is the only way to counteract the timer. It genuinely amazes me how much freedom and variety this game provides and how the timer completely kills that. Unfortunately, that is not the only controversial aspect of this game. One of Modern Warfare 3's innovations is that the player count has been increased from 4 players to 24 players. Each of these 24 players will be separated into squads, and each squad can only have 3 players at most, which can either be randoms or friends that you've invited. You are also allowed to join a lobby by yourself or with a friend without being in a full squad, and additionally, you and your teammates can join other squads mid-match. The number of players in a joint squad can be 6 players at most, but whatever you decide to do, each match will always have other random players. Now, this on its own is perfectly fine. If anything, playing in a 6-man squad is one of the coolest things about this game. However, you are always forced to play with random players in the match, and that's because, for some reason, Modern Warfare 3 only allows you to play public matches. This is literally the only zombies game in the series that does not allow you to create a private match. And before anyone says that it's because of the high player count, fucking Warzone has a private match setting. How the fuck is there a private match setting for a battle royale mode but not a zombies mode? The only people who are ever gonna realistically use that option are either YouTubers that want to play with their subscribers or people making Warzone tournaments, especially since you need 50 players minimum to start a private match in Warzone. So I ask again, why would you give this option to Warzone where people are realistically never gonna use this option and not put it in zombies where a massive portion of people are gonna use that option? Let's go over the multiple problems that come with this. You can't pause in this game like every other zombies mode. You are not able to play this mode on local like every other zombies mode. And finally, you are forced to play on dedicated servers, which wouldn't be that much of a problem if it weren't for the servers being terrible. This game can go from being playable to this in a matter of moments. Sometimes you get mild packet bursts that you can deal with, and other times the game will have over 1000 ping. If I was in a higher threat zone in this clip, I would have been absolutely destroyed. How are you supposed to play the game like this? Also, this can sometimes happen. There's also this clip. Now look, all of these issues have the potential to be fixed. They can add a private match setting like they've always done in every COD game before this one, and they can increase the timer to fix all of the freedom issues concerning it. Not only that, but due to the way that this game is designed, there was a lot of fertile ground for interesting types of content. They can add more maps like how they did in DMZ, they can add more objectives, maybe add a raid of some kind, and a ton of other ideas that could have made this mode stand on its own as a very unique zombies experience. Modern Warfare 3, despite not being the traditional type of zombies, showed so much promise at launch, and I, as well as many other people, were interested to see how this mode would evolve. As of the time I'm making this video, it has been over 9 months since the game released, and we are currently in Season 5 Reloaded. So with all of that said, how did this mode change in nearly a year? We've now reached the point of the video where I'm gonna be negative for the most part. But let's talk about the positives first, starting with containment levels. This feature was introduced in Season 2, and it adds to the unified progression that I talked about earlier. Whenever you complete a contract, your containment level will increase depending on which zone you completed that contract. Tier 1 contracts will give you 1 level, Tier 2 contracts will give you 2 levels, and Tier 3 contracts will give you 3 levels. These levels will accumulate every match you play, and as you collect these levels, you'll gain access to bonuses in future matches. The last bonus you'll get is at 100 containment levels, and when you get to this point, you'll start every single match with 5,000 points, have a discount on perks, mystery box, and pack-a-punch, and you'll get 30% more points for completing contracts. As for the rest of the positives, all of them are quality of life stuff that are pretty small, but great improvements nonetheless. A couple examples include the Merc Fortress guaranteeing a wonder weapon case, and the ability to store 20 items in your stash when you originally only had the ability to store 10. And, yeah, I think that's it for the positives. Let's first go over the things that Season 1 added, starting with the new fortress. This new fortress is set on top of skyscrapers, and it has the same general concept as the last one. The difference this time is that the warlord uses bomb drones to both fly around and blow you up. It's still not the most fun thing in the world, but I guess you can still do it if you want a wonder weapon. Another thing that was added was a new story mission. This mission is available for everyone, even if you didn't complete any of the previous story missions. This mission has you go to a portal instead of a helicopter, and this portal takes you to the Dark Ether. Like the other missions, this one has you do objectives that are asked of you like it's a campaign mission, the difference being that the zombies are a lot more involved this time. This mission also ends with the boss fight, which is the exact same boss fight that we had in the last story mission, except the name changed. I'm not kidding, that's what they did. The only thing that they did to change the difficulty is that you no longer have access to a buy station. Other than that, it's the exact same boss. Anyways, once you defeat the worm, again, you'll get a diary, which will be important later. For now though, let's talk about the secret boss fight that they added in Urzikstan. In order to access this fight, you first need to get 4 USBs around the map. These will spawn in a set of 12 locations each game, and you have to collect them all before the match ends. After getting the USBs, you have to locate the boss arena. In the arena, you'll find 4 devices that you have to insert the USBs into. You'll be able to insert the USBs into these devices once the Ether Storm takes over that part of the map. Once the storm takes over the boss arena and you've inserted all of the USBs, the boss will appear after 60 seconds. Now some of you watching this video may look at this boss and think, wow, that looks really similar to the ones we've already fought. But see, I disagree with that, because as you can clearly see, this one is red and the others are purple. It's one thing to reuse a boss fight that's already in the game, but it's something completely different when you reuse the same boss fight twice, and in the same update too. Anyways, the extra challenge in this fight is that the zombies and special enemies will spawn a lot more frequently, and you have to get a gas mask for this fight. Once you defeat this worm, you'll get a reward rift that will contain one of 3 new schematics. There's the Flawless Ethereum Crystal schematic that triple pack-a-punches your weapon, the Legendary Ether Tool schematic, and the Scorcher schematic. As for how the game decides which schematic you'll get, not only is it completely random, but it is possible to get duplicate schematics of ones that you already have. For example, in my case, I have beaten this boss fight 6 times and I still don't have the Scorcher schematic. What I will say about this boss fight is that it's definitely the most fun and rewarding worm boss fight out of the 3, but again, it has no novelty. The next new thing that they added was a new wonder weapon, which is the VR-11 from Call of the Dead. The VR-11 allowed you to shoot an energy blast that would turn zombies into humans, which would distract other zombies. The VR-11 also had a secondary ability where if you were to shoot your teammate, they would get insta-kill. It was definitely a useful weapon to have in co-op, but in solo it was completely outclassed by the crossbow, and even with the insta-kill effect in co-op, it just wasn't fun to use. However, the VR-11 in Modern Warfare 3 is a completely different beast. It can now turn zombies into mercs that will shoot the other zombies alongside you, it can do insane single target damage against bosses, and finally it can heal vehicles as well as the rover that you escort in the escort contract. It still mostly plays a support role in this game, but it's an incredible weapon when used offensively. Now let's go into the final and biggest addition that Season 1 got. Remember the diary that I mentioned a few minutes earlier? Well, now is the time to talk about it again. Once you complete the Dark Ether story mission and exfil with the diary, you have to go into another match and find 3 other important items. You'll get the 3 other items by doing specific tasks in some of the side objectives around the map, and afterwards you have to upgrade their rarity. The first item you need is schizophrenia pills, and in order to get this, you have to go into an ether nest and shoot one of the spores with the brain rot ammo type. Not sure why there's schizophrenia pills inside of the spores, but I'm pretty sure there's some explanation to it, I just don't know what it is. The next item you need is a dog collar, and in order to get this dog collar, you have to take either a thermite grenade or a Molotov cocktail and throw it inside of a doghouse, which sounds really fucking demonic when I say it out loud. The last item you need is a camera, and in order to get this camera, you have to destroy one of the purple orbs around the map using a gun with the dead wire ammo type. To upgrade the rarity of these items, you have to jump into an ether tear, and while you're in the air, you have to jump into another ether tear. Doing this will spawn a bounty contract that, when completed, will give you an upgraded version of one of the items. Once you complete all of the bounty contracts and get all of the 4 items, you have to go to this island behind the Dark Ether portal. In this island, you're gonna find 4 altars that you have to place your items in. Doing this will spawn a very big portal that, when interacted with, will spawn a mega abomination. Kill the mega abomination that spawns from it, and then a reward rift will appear that contains a sigil, which allows you to access the secret portal. Now, if you ever want to access this portal in future matches, you can get sigils from completing tier 3 contracts instead of getting the 4 items again. And as for the portal itself, it allows you to go to the same Dark Ether that you went in the Act 4 mission. However, the objective this time is different. You have to complete 3 contracts that are around the same difficulty as regular tier 3 contracts. The difference this time is that the contracts in the Dark Ether give you unique rewards. The contracts that you have to complete are Escort, Outlast, and Ethereum Extractor. The former 2 contracts are pretty much the same as the ones that you find in the regular map, but the Ether Extractor contract spawns in zombies and special enemies instead of mercs, which immediately makes it a better contract. The contracts aren't marked on your map, and you have to find them by yourself. Each of these contracts spawn in the exact same location every game, and when you go to the contracts, you'll find the bunny that you have to pick up to start the contract. How are you able to do these contracts exactly? Especially the Escort contract is a head scratcher to me. How did this massive tank looking thing just drop out of the sky? And why did it happen when I interacted with the bunny? Can bunnies from alternate dimensions airdrop tanks? Am I the first human being on the planet to ask that question? Anyways, you could choose to do any of these contracts in any order, but you only have 30 minutes to complete these contracts and leave using one of the portals around the map. There's no penalty to either failing a contract or not doing a contract other than losing the reward rift like regular contracts. So if you want to, you can leave the Dark Ether without doing every single contract in there. You can also leave without doing a single contract. Not sure why you would want to do that, but the option is there. So what are these unique rewards that you can get from the Dark Ether? There is the Ether Blade, which is an infinite use throwing knife that kills a few zombies and will boomerang back to you. Basically, it's the Health Retriever from Mob of the Dead, except it has a shorter cooldown and it kills less zombies per throw. Then there's the Dog Bone, which allows you to spawn in a friendly Hellhound that can kill zombies, distract special enemies, and can even revive you. Side note, there is a way to get this dog without using this item. There are dog houses that are littered all over the map, and if you put chunks of meat inside of these dog houses, you can spawn a friendly Hellhound. You can get these chunks of meat by killing zombies with pack-a-punched weapons or with explosives. The power of this dog will depend on 2 things. The first being is which threat zone the doghouse is located in, and the second being the number of chunks that you put inside of this doghouse. However, the dogbone item that you get from this ether allows you to spawn in the most powerful version of the dog immediately. And finally, we have the most powerful addition, and that's the golden armor plate. What this item essentially does is that it allows you to regenerate armor. Whenever you get any of these items, you have the ability to either use them immediately or store them in your inventory to use them in a future match. All of these items are great additions that heavily affect regular matches. The Ether Blade and the friendly Hellhound are good at getting quick kills that alleviate pressure from objectives, and the golden armor plate allows you to save armor for more important encounters and is a lifesaver when you don't have armor. Now, while all of these items are great items, some people might think that it's not worth all the trouble to get these items from the Dark Aether. It generally takes around 20 to 40 minutes to get the setup necessary to go into the Dark Aether and complete all 3 contracts. Not only that, but there's a chance that you don't get the item that you want since it's completely random. But not to worry, all of the items I mentioned have schematics that you can get from completing another version of the Dark Aether called the Elder Dark Aether. Whenever you complete contracts in the regular Dark Aether, there's a chance that you get an item called the Elder Sigil. You can store this item into your inventory and go into the next match and use it to open the massive portal. Doing so will send you to the Elder version of the Dark Aether. So what's the difference between this version of the Dark Aether and the regular version of the Dark Aether? Well, it's the difficulty. The timer is now 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes, the special enemy spawn rate is increased exponentially, and mega abominations can now spawn in the escort contract. Oh, and by the way, these are not tier 3 zombies anymore, these are now tier 4 zombies. Tier 4 zombies are tier 3 zombies, but with 30% more health, and they do 20% more damage. With zombies having that much health, the only thing that can reliably kill them are wonder weapons, kill streaks, and Casimirs. Trying to do this rift without either a full squad or without spamming the most overpowered shit in the game is basically impossible. I mean, you could just take a look at this clip and see for yourself. Look at this. Just look at the screen. What the fuck is this? The only reason I managed to beat this contract at all is because I had the VR11 with me to heal the rover. If I didn't have a VR11 or a bunch of Casimirs or a Scorcher, it would basically be impossible for me to beat this rift. Now granted, I am putting myself in a disadvantage here because I went in alone. If I decided to go into this rift with a full squad, I would have a much easier time completing it. Most of the time, people are willing to help you out with the Dark Aether, so it is really easy to get a full squad. This is especially the case in this rift because not only are the schematics incredibly powerful, but you're guaranteed to get all of the schematics if you manage to beat every single contract in one match. Overall, I like the idea of the Dark Aether, but I think it was poorly implemented. The biggest problem with the Dark Aether is that there's no incentive to go to it after the first couple of times, and that's because of 2 things. These 2 things are how long it takes to set up for the Dark Aether and the rewards that you get out of it. Let's talk about the rewards first. In both the regular and the Elder Dark Aether, the chance of getting good items is generally the same, with the only difference being the schematics in the Elder variant. And the chance of getting good items in both Dark Aethers are similar to the regular tier 3 zone, with the exception of getting the exclusive items in the Dark Aether. So if you get all of the schematics from the Elder variant, there's no reason to go to it again since you already have its exclusive rewards. The only rewards that you can get from the Elder variant are ones that are already available in the regular Dark Aether, which is much easier. And as for the regular Dark Aether, the same general rewards are already there in the regular tier 3 zone. The only difference is that you have a chance to get one of the new items from there, which isn't even guaranteed. For example, this is a reward rift that I got from completing the Ether Extractor contract. I got a Monkey Bomb, Speed Cola, and Brain Rot. This is literally one of the only 3 contracts that I can complete in that match, and I got useless garbage out of it. When you factor in how long it takes to get set up for the Dark Aether, which generally takes around 20 to 40 minutes, and then factor the amount of time it takes to finish the Dark Aether, which generally takes around 10 to 15 minutes, the incentive lessens even further. Spending nearly an hour just to get 1 or 2 unique items that can only be used once per match is excessive, and sometimes you don't even get the item that you want. And if that happens, now you have to play another match that's nearly an hour long just for the chance to get the item that you want. By the way, this doesn't only apply to the 3 new items, this also applies to the Elder Sigil, which you need to access the Elder Dark Aether. There's this one time I wanted to go to the Elder Dark Aether to get some footage out of it, so of course I had to go to the regular Dark Aether and get the Elder Sigil. So I went into the regular Dark Aether, completed every single contract, and not a single one of them gave me the sigil that I needed. So I went into another match and the exact same thing happened again. So what that means is I have to go into a 3rd match hoping that the exact same thing doesn't happen again. It took me over 2 fucking hours to get the thing because it had that bad of a drop rate. The fact that it can take that long to access this version of the Dark Aether and you still get rewards that are just as bad as the regular Dark Aether is baffling to me. Why would anyone go to the Elder Dark Aether after getting the schematics? Not only can it take literal hours to even access the rift, but the rift itself is just not fun. The Elder Dark Aether has some of the highest amount of artificial difficulty ever seen in zombies. The game just throws hordes and hordes of zombies at you like you're going up against the droid army, and the only thing you can do is to spam copious amounts of insta-kill and crowd control weapons. In a regular solo match of round-based, only 24 zombies can spawn at once, and other zombies will only spawn in if any of the 24 were killed. This made it much more manageable to go against them regardless of how fast they are or how much health they had, and this limit will only increase if the number of players increased. In Modern Warfare 3, not only is this limit absent and you'll deal with the same number of zombies regardless of how many players are present, but you also have to do objectives while dealing with them. This was fine when zombies were killable with most weapons, but now they're so buffed up that you have to use the most overpowered stuff to even survive. Another problem that I have with the Dark Aether is that the contracts that you do are exactly the same as the ones that you do in the regular map. There's no interesting twist or gimmick that makes these contracts more unique. This dimension is supposed to feel more magical or supernatural than the regular dimension, but other than the aesthetic, there's nothing that shows that. Say, for example, in the escort contract, instead of escorting a massive rover, you escort a mega abomination. Or in the Outlast contract, the game teleports you to different locations every 30 seconds, so now you have to constantly adapt to each area. Things of that nature that add interesting gameplay to the Dark Aether instead of just ramping up the difficulty artificially. Honestly, if I wasn't recording this video, then I would have never gotten out of my way to play the Dark Aether again. But what about the rest of the seasons? Surely they got better, right? Season 2, a new fortress is added that replaces the last one and has a different gimmick. This time, instead of using bomb drones, the warlord uses red gas, which is significantly worse. Next thing they added is another Dark Aether that is unlocked by getting 4 items and has unique items that can be unlocked in the regular Dark Aether and their schematics in the Elder Dark Aether. I don't know about you, but these additions seem really similar to the last season. Surely the third season is different, right? It cannot possibly be the exact same idea. Season 3, new fortress, different gimmick. This time Warlord uses explosives. Not as annoying, but still really annoying. New Dark Aether, unlocked by getting 4 items, has unique items in the regular Dark Aether and their schematics in the Elder Dark Aether. At this point, we are nearly 6 months into the game's life cycle and we got the exact same type of content 3 times in a row. I know that each Dark Aether is different in some way and they aren't exactly the same, but the differences aren't enough. For those of you who don't know, every single location from the Dark Aether is part of one of the Warzone maps called Al-Mazrah. The first Dark Aether takes place in Al-Bagara Fortress, El-Bagara. The second Dark Aether takes place in Sa'id City, and the third Dark Aether takes place in Zarqa Hydroelectric. So essentially, each Dark Aether has the same size as a ground war map. Now, normally this would significantly change the gameplay, but in this case, it doesn't, and here's why. In Call of Duty Zombies, the only factors that are important are movement and positioning. Things like range and elevations almost never factor in your gameplay. Alongside this, the AI movement of zombies is simple and predictable. This is reflected in your decisions while interacting with the zombies. In every single zombies game, the best strategy for survival is to run in circles in a spacious area. This is why zombies maps are always enclosed, and when they do have spacious areas that are available, they generally have set spawns that are there to cut you off while training. For example, the front of the lighthouse in Call of the Dead is one of the best training spots in that map due to how spacious it is. However, zombies can come from the PhD area, the lighthouse area, the pathway by the water, and can even spawn from the ground. Now let's go into another map and pick its main training spot. Let's say Ascension's PhD lander. This area is a lot bigger than the front of the lighthouse in Call of the Dead, and zombies only come from 2 directions, unlike Call of the Dead where they come from 3 directions and can spawn from the ground. Other training spots from other maps or even in the same map will have a different type of space and different spawns. There's other things that factor in, like the resources that you have and the enemies that you fight and all that, but these 2 particular factors are the ones that are important. Now compare that to Modern Warfare 3, where the play space is extremely large in most areas of both the regular map and the Dark Aether. These areas may look drastically different from each other, but they play very similarly, and the reason for that is because the play space is so big that you have the ability to go in any direction at any time in all of these areas. Let me show you a visual representation of what I mean to get a better idea of what I'm talking about. Right, as you can see, we have these 2 drawings right here. You have this, and you have this. These 2 areas are going to represent concept ideas of areas that you would see in a zombies map, right? For example, this one right here, you have the entrance from here, you have 2 zombie spawns from here, and you have this one with its entrance and 2 zombie spawns, right? So, As you can tell, this area is a lot smaller than this area, and it also has a much more complicated shape, right? So this area would be a lot more dangerous than this one. This would be, you know, like areas like the Speed Cola location in Mob of the Dead or the Buried Pack-a-Punch, where it's a small area but it has a very important item. While this area would be considered a training spot, because look at how much space you have when you train. So let me do this. There we go. So if I were to go from this area, and if I were to stay in the middle where I wait for the zombies to come from here and here and here, I can move around a lot more freely, right? And the exit that I have is really big, so even if there's a couple of zombies coming from this area, I can, you know, go from this area here, and I'll probably be fine. If I were to do the same thing here, you see my movements are a lot more limited, and it's a lot more difficult to survive in this area. So, as you can see, this area feels a lot more claustrophobic than this area would, right? Because their shapes are different, they have different spaces, all that. If we make them 15 times larger, see how when we go back to, like, look at how much I can move from here to here to here, right? You can see the difference. Like, if I do this, right? I go to the middle, I do this, I can move around as much as I would like to. But if I go here, I don't have that option. So I can move as much as I want to right here, but I can do the exact same thing here. So this area and this area is pretty much the same in the middle. It's until we get to the edges that we actually feel a difference. This is what I mean when I say that the Dark Aether areas play very similar to each other. You'll find these massive areas all around them, and while the shape of the maps are different, they are so massive that while in gameplay you rarely feel the difference. Since this is the case, it would be great if they made changes to how each Dark Aether works, or by making massive additions to differentiate each Dark Aether. I'll say that there were some changes in the third Dark Aether, but I can't say the same about the second Dark Aether. The only thing that the second Dark Aether does is replaces the escort contract with a bounty contract. Other than that, it plays pretty much the same as the first one. The third Rift, on the other hand, removes the ability to use kill streaks and replaces it with 3 items that give you strong passive abilities. Whenever you start a contract in the third Rift, you'll be given one of those items that you have to store in your inventory. The bounty contract will give you a brain, and when this brain is in your inventory, you'll occasionally see zombies and special enemies with a yellow outline around them. Killing any of these enemies with a headshot will make them explode, which will do severe damage to nearby enemies. The Outlast contract will give you a foot, and when it's in your inventory, any zombie and special enemy near you will slow down the closer they are to you. Finally, the escort contract will give you a hand, and when it's in your inventory, special enemies will occasionally glow green. Whenever you kill these special enemies that are glowing green, they will give you a guaranteed nuke. These items make the Rift a lot more fun than the others, and I think it does enough to make this Rift feel more distinct than the others. However, this Rift still has the Dark Aether's signature move of spamming zombies, which makes you rely more on Casimirs than these new items. Except this time, the spawn rate is increased even more. Not only is the amount of zombies and special enemies exponentially higher in every single contract, but the amount of zombies and special enemies that you'll see as you're just walking around the map is also exponentially higher. Like, take a look at this clip, okay? I am being completely surrounded by hundreds of zombies. Every single pathway I go to is completely blocked, and I have less than a minute to exfil. I then go to this corner where I'm completely surrounded. So to defend myself, I use an energy mine, and the game is so insulted by my audacity to defend myself that it traps me inside of a wall. Truly, I am living the middle school experience of getting trapped inside of a locker by a bully. Now, you could say, again, that I am putting myself in a disadvantage by playing alone, but the idea that I am being punished this much because I'm playing alone is ridiculous. I want to reiterate, my problem with the Dark Aether's difficulty isn't that it's too difficult, but rather it's the way that it's difficult. Instead of being a true test of your skill, it more so feels like it's a test of how you can bypass the system, and that type of difficulty is so unfun. But hey, there is some light at the end of this tunnel, at least for the Season 3 Rift. If you manage to complete every single contract in one run, you can actually do a boss fight. This boss fight is available in both the regular version of the Dark Aether as well as the Elder version. This boss fight is against the Disciple that can spawn mimics and Manglers? This disciple is pretty much mechanically the exact same as the other disciples, except it has more health and it can spawn other enemies. What worsens this lack of creativity is that you already fight this disciple in the third Act 4 mission. Look, I am perfectly fine with giving games a little bit of wiggle room, right? You want to reuse the worm again? Sure, okay, fine, I'll take it. You want to reuse it twice? That's pushing it a little. But now what you want to do is to take the Mangler and the Disciple and give them one arbitrary ability. Then you want to take these two enemy types, give them one massive health bar on the top of the screen and call them a boss fight. And the fact that they reused that Disciple is a completely new level of uncreative. But hey, there is a silver lining with this rift and the Season 2 rift, which is that you're guaranteed to get the Oh, shit. In the first Dark Aether, you would get a guaranteed schematic from each rift. So if you wanted to get every single schematic from the Dark Aether, you had to do an entire run where you completed every single contract. This made it so that the only people who can get every single schematic from the first rift are the people who are good enough to finish every single contract in one run. I thought this was a good thing because the powerful schematics are gate-kept by skill. In the second and third Dark Aether, this was changed, and of course, it was changed in the worst way possible. Schematics are no longer guaranteed from the Word Rift. This means that you can complete every single contract on Elder difficulty and not get a single schematic. And what's worse is that you can get a schematic that you've already gotten before. Like for example, the first time I went to the third rift, I got a golden gas mask schematic. When I went there a second time, I got that schematic again, not once, but twice. This has made the schematics grind so monotonous and unfun that to this day I don't have every single schematic and I refuse to go for them. And honestly, it's not like all of the schematics are worth going for anyway. The strong schematics are the VR11 schematic, the Mags of Holding schematic, which gives you an item that puts all of the gun's stock ammo into one magazine, and the Deadwire detonator schematic, which makes all explosives activate Deadwire at all times. The rest are pretty much borderline useless. There's almost no reason to ever use them. But overall, this was the content that we've gotten in the span of 6 months. The main form of content that we've gotten over these 6 months are the 3 Dark Aethers, and trying to compare them is like trying to compare 3 versions of the iPhone. Each one has minor improvements over the other, while simultaneously making terrible decisions like the removal of guaranteed schematics. This would be the equivalent of how Apple removed the ability to use headphones and a charger at the same time. I'm getting sidetracked and talking about terrible decisions made by Apple and not terrible decisions made by Modern Warfare 3. So let's talk about another terrible decision that Modern Warfare 3 made. The Unstable Rift. In Season 4 of Modern Warfare 3, we actually get something different. We don't get a new fortress or a Dark Aether. Instead, we get the Unstable Rift. I'm gonna say this off the bat, if we count the Unstable Rift and all of the Dark Aethers as Easter eggs, the Unstable Rift might actually be in the top 5 worst Easter eggs in zombies, and that is saying a lot when you consider how many bad Easter eggs exist. So first, how do you access the Unstable Rift? Around 10 minutes after starting the match, 3 obelisks will spawn around the map. Each obelisk will have the icon of one of the 5 alternate ammo types in the game inscribed into it. You have to interact with the obelisk and kill zombies with the corresponding ammo type, and by the way, you need to have the corresponding ammo type equipped first in order to interact with any of the obelisks. Once you get enough kills, the obelisk will blow up, and doing that to all 3 obelisks will spawn a red portal somewhere around the map. Once you go to this portal and interact with it, you'll be sent to the Unstable Rift. Now, you may be thinking, how could that possibly compare to the worst of zombies Easter eggs? Well, first, the obelisk can spawn in a set of locations. I would like you to take a guess on how many locations these can spawn. Here, I'll give you 10 seconds to really think about it, okay? Here's 10 seconds. Make sure you really think of your answer. It's 50. There's 50 locations where these obelisks can spawn in. That is insane. And it's not like they're really close to each other or anything. I mean, just look at the map yourself. Look at this. How did someone look at this and think this is perfectly fine? Not even the bird step was this bad. Okay, at least in Blood, the map is significantly smaller and you can use the bird's light trail to narrow down the location. There's nothing of that nature with the Unstable Rift. This is, hands down, the most tedious step in all of Zombies, at least from the Treyarch games. But that's not even the worst part of it. There is one factor in this quest that has never been part of any Easter egg in any Zombies game. When you destroy all 3 obelisks, an indicator on the map will appear that shows you where the red portal is. And as I said earlier, the location is random. This indicator will not just appear to you or your teammates, but to every single player in the match. If any other person gets to this red portal before you, they will go into the Unstable Rift and the portal will disappear. I am not kidding. That can actually happen. Any person can interact with this rift even if they didn't contribute at all. So you can go out of your way to destroy every single obelisk by yourself and another team can fucking steal it from you. I know people generally don't ever go to the Unstable Rift alone without deliberately preparing for it beforehand. So even if other players are near the portal, some of them will either join other squads first or completely ignore it. But the fact that the rift can be stolen at all is actually incomprehensible to me. But let's say you manage to destroy the 3 obelisks and you get into the portal before anyone else. Fantastic, you can now play the Unstable Rift. Before you even begin this rift, the game will give a bunch of bonuses to all players. These bonuses include fully upgrading all weapons that every player has to Legendary Rarity and Tier 3 Pack-a-Punch, and giving all players every single perk, gold armor, and mags of holding. I actually really like this change because players can now go for the Unstable Rift without worrying about the resources that they lack. I wish the Dark Ethers had a feature similar to this because it would save a lot of time. However, this is unfortunately where the positives end for the Unstable Rift. So how does the Unstable Rift actually work? Players have 45 minutes to complete 5 phases of constant zombie and special enemy hordes. Each phase starts by continuously sending hordes for a portion of time until a special enemy with a bounty spawns in. Killing the bounty will complete the phase, which will then give players a reward rift that generally gives you kill streaks. Each phase will have more special enemies than the last, and later phases will spawn HVT versions of those special enemies. Thankfully, this rift does not spawn mega abominations, which I guess is a positive that I forgot to talk about. As for the bounty in each phase, the first bounty is an HVT Mimic, the second one is an HVT Mangler, the third bounty is the Stormcaller version of the Disciple, the fourth bounty is the Electrical Mangler and Mimic that were in the Act 4 mission of Season 2, and the final bounty is the Disciple from the third Dark Ether. Once you complete the final phase, you can exfil and complete the challenge. The reward that you get out of completing this challenge is all of the schematic cooldowns will be reset. Overall, I think that the Unstable Rift is actually a very good idea. However, the problems that I have with the Unstable Rift are the same as the ones that I have in the Elder Dark Ether. The zombie spawns in this rift, like the Elder Dark Ether, are ridiculous and they have tier 4 health and damage. However, the difference between the Elder Dark Ether and the Unstable Rift is that in the Elder Dark Ether you're doing 3 objectives, while in the Unstable Rift you are doing a lengthy holdout. So you cannot just finish the Unstable Rift by spamming Casimirs and kill streaks. The only strategy that you can do in the Unstable Rift is in each phase you have to do some cheesy strategy to stall for time until a bounty shows up, and then once the bounty shows up you use a high DPS weapon to take him out and then rinse and repeat until you finish the rift. One of these strategies is to get the RGL with dead wire detonators and keep doing this.
I got struck by lightning, whatever. Oh, I'd love to move game, but my toes are cramping.
Dude, my index finger is literally fucked.
It just keeps going and going and going.
I just thought of something really funny. I feel like
is it actually funny, or is it us going insane funny?
I feel like I'm in a Mr. Beast challenge. But I
challenge these 3 players to fight millions upon millions of undead hordes. If they can make it through 5 waves of the unrelenting undead, they'll win $1 million.
This is literally the majority of my footage. I have 30 minutes of this. This is by far one of, if not the most mind-numbing thing that you can do in zombies. Well, except for the obvious, of course. Holdouts have been a thing in zombies for a very long time, and most of the time they are done in an interesting way and never overstay their welcome. For example, there's a step in the Origins Easter egg where you have to do a holdout in the main chamber and melee Templar zombies to get the Iron Fist. This holdout only lasts a couple of minutes, and you're not forced to stay in that area until you finish it. You can leave the main chamber at any time without losing progress. In Shadows of Evil's flag step, you have to do multiple holdouts with the flag, but instead of staying in one place the entire time, the game has you constantly move the flag from one place to another. In Dead of the Night's Easter egg, you have to do 3 holdouts, and each of them have their own set of enemies. Each of these holdouts has some kind of interesting gimmick that doesn't make the holdout artificially harder. Plus, these holdouts don't last that long, and zombies can be killed with most, if not all, weapons. The Unstable Rift is the complete antithesis of this. It's not fun to unlock, nor is it fun to play, and the reward of resetting your schematic cooldown is not worth it in my opinion. And I don't think I am alone in this one. I think this is an opinion that most people share. As I've been recording this video, I've seen numerous random players ask to play the Dark Aether or the Red Worm, but I've barely seen anyone want to play the Unstable Rift. It is by far the most unpopular part of the game, and honestly, I can't understand how anyone making this game played the Unstable Rift and think it was ever a good idea to release it without making drastic changes. At last we arrive at Season 5, which is the latest season. This is going to be the last season with any major updates, and Modern Warfare 3 ends with another Dark Aether. So how does this version of the iPhone compare to the other iPhones? This is by far the most unique Dark Aether we've got in terms of aesthetics and gameplay. There's a bunch of flying platforms and vehicles like trains, buses, boats, all of which you can access and jump on top of and jump from. It's awesome. This is by far the best implementation of parkour we've ever gotten in zombies, and seeing all these flying platforms and vehicles all over this massive map really gives it that magical feeling that I've always wanted from the Dark Aether. It is unfortunate though that I hate everything else about this rift. This Dark Aether is unlocked by doing the exact same thing as the last 3 Dark Aethers, has a regular and Elder variant just like the last 3 Dark Aethers, has 3 unlockable schematics just like the last 3 Dark Aethers, and it has contracts that are already on the regular map, just like the last 3 Dark Aethers. I will say that this Dark Aether does make some improvements. You consistently get much better loot in this rift than the other rifts. Every time you do this rift, you will consistently get flawless Ethereum crystals and legendary Aether wrenches. Another thing that this rift improves upon the other rift is the movement around the map. The launch pads that are littered all over the map that make you fly from place to place makes the flow a lot more smoother in this rift. But beyond that, it is pretty much the same gameplay you've already experienced in the other rifts. Like, they introduced a parkour aspect into this rift, and they don't even bother to fully utilize it. The only contract that has anything to do with parkour in this rift is the Spore contract. The Outlast contract and the Escort contract work the exact same way they did as the other rifts. They should have put Ethereum extractors and bounty instead of Outlast and Escort, and this rift would have been much better. But even then, I don't think it would have really mattered to me because I am so sick and fucking tired of this concept. The bulk of all of the seasonal content this game got in 9 months is the exact same thing over and over and over again. In the span of 9 months, we have gotten no new maps, no new contracts, no new enemy types that are unique and not a variation of one that's already in the game, no new game modes, only 2 wonder weapons which are variations of wonder weapons that we've already had, no notable buy station or loot update, no timer increase, no private match option, and no map changes. The only type of content that we have gotten the entire year is endgame content. There is almost nothing that was added to the main gameplay loop in this game, and it has pretty much stayed the same since launch. Back in previous games where there's multiple maps available, the maps felt distinct despite all of them being round-based maps. The reason for this is that each map had its own unique type of progression, utilities, or challenge that set it apart from the other maps. For example, in Black Ops 1, all of the maps had their own set of enemy types and map layouts that set them apart from each other. For example, Moon was a large map that had anti-gravity as well as a boss that constantly followed you around to steal your perks. Shangri-La, on the other hand, was much smaller and more claustrophobic and had 3 enemy types that had different forms of attack. Having multiple maps that each have different types of gameplay will give you multiple ways to play zombies, and these ways of playing zombies are different from the moment you start the game all the way until you get to the high rounds. This is one of the main reasons why Call of Duty Zombies has always been a replayable mode. However, in Modern Warfare 3, all of these different types of play are relegated to the last 10 to 30 minutes of a match. Because of this, all of the different ways you can play this game become homogenized. One of the reasons why this video took so long to make, other than the weeks of college assignments that have shortened my lifespan, is that the gameplay of Modern Warfare 3 was so drawn out and repetitive that I couldn't play the game for long periods of time. And honestly, I think the game was intentionally designed this way. As this video has gone on, I have made numerous remarks about the problems of this game and how they could be fixed, with my main example being the timer. As I played the game more and more for this video, every problem of similar nature made me wonder why they never fixed these issues. Eventually, I've come to the realization that the decision making of this game is centered on making consumers play the game as much as humanly possible by making every aspect of the game a massive grind. It's the only conclusion to me that makes any sense. Instead of having a long timer that allows you to get set up and play in the high threat zone for a long period of time, there is a short timer that forces you to spend multiple matches farming for acquisitions in the low threat zones to play in the high threat zone. Instead of having one type of Dark Ether that has both the acquisitions and their schematics, they add another type of Dark Ether that has the schematics, and the only way to get to it is to play the regular version first. Then in this new version of the Dark Ether, they increase the difficulty artificially to make it more likely for people to lose and repeat the process all over again. Then they make it a step further by making the schematics of the new Dark Ethers not guaranteed. On top of that, they make it possible to get schematics that you already have, or schematics that you've already gotten in the same match. And on that topic, they have multiple Dark Ethers with their own set of schematics just to make you spend time unlocking each of them, and then spend even more time grinding for each of their schematics individually. And all of this without even mentioning how they've handled patches over the year. Back in the beginning of this game's life cycle, Treyarch nerfed a lot of contracts as well as the exfil sequence. This nerf was to reduce the amount of zombies they would get in both Outlast and Spore contracts as well as exfil sequences. The reason for this nerf is because people were using these 3 things to grind for camos. They are so quick to patch exploits that people only use to get past the boring grind that they've created, and then they forget about technical issues that people have been facing for weeks. And no, I'm not talking about visual bugs or anything of that nature. When I say technical issues, I'm talking about crashes. Allow me to talk about one of the other reasons why this video took so long to make. Ever since the release of Season 5, many people have had constant crashes every single match. One of those people was me. I was getting crashes every single match, and it became more and more frustrating. Initially, I thought this problem was only on PC because it's very unlikely that this crashing problem was in every single platform. So I decided, for this video, okay, to buy the game again on PlayStation 5. I may have 2 copies of this shit game, but I did get it on a discount for $45, and I can finally record this video. So I went into a match expecting my game to work, and then I was hit with the regret of 1,000 divorce cases. But not all hope is lost. There's still the PlayStation 4. So I went searching for my decade-old PlayStation 4, plugged it in, downloaded the game, and hoped for the best. Clinging to my last stray of hope, I went into a match and it was like I was playing Black Ops 4 all over again. A couple of weeks have passed at this point, and a lot of people from every single platform are facing this issue. This eventually led to people figuring out it was a region-based issue. If you had a copy of Modern Warfare 3 that is from certain regions, you will have this crashing issue on Zombies, one of the maps in multiplayer called Rio, as well as Rebirth Island in Warzone. One of the most notable versions of the game that had this issue was the version from the Middle East, which is where I live.
يا رجال 18 والله عيب والله عيب
يا ابوي اشوف الكلات بعدين نسولف
يا بعد اربيتي شخصت بالتشكيل واتساب اربيتي يا حمود امدح
اربيتي
امدح
واحد
امدح
I also happened to buy the game on the only two platforms where I can't change my region, which is Battle.net and PlayStation. So the only way for me to record any footage is to somehow get a third copy of the game that is American. So after this was figured out, I made an American Xbox account and got Game Pass on my PC. After doing this, I finally managed to play the video game without any issues. It is insane to me that a crashing issue of this magnitude took nearly a month to fix. For 4 weeks, not only was the newest Warzone map unplayable, but one of the 4 main modes was completely unplayable for every single Middle Eastern player. And it's not like they were inactive for these 4 weeks, they were fixing numerous issues, with most of them being exploits and multiplayer in Warzone. Look, I'm not saying that exploits should be completely ignored, but when they take priority over the stability of the game, that is a problem. I absolutely fucking hate this development mentality that prioritizes maximizing attention over making a fun game. I don't hate the ideas that this game provides, but these ideas can't flourish properly when they're making decisions that constantly hinder the experience. But honestly, I think this is enough. I've said my piece about the gameplay. All that's left to talk about regarding this game is the story, which isn't much better. The story begins with our temporary villain, Viktor Zakhaev, who is a reboot of Viktor Zakhaev from COD 4, which came out nearly 17 years ago. Okay, I guess. In search of powerful weapons that he wants to sell, Zakhaev finds out about Ethereum, which is this story's version of Element 115. He also finds out about the conflict between Requiem and Omega Group, which are the factions that were against each other in Cold War Zombies. After finding out about this information, Zakhaev hires a private military group called Terminus and goes on an operation with them in Urzikstan. In this operation, he goes into a random basement that has Ethereum vials, and surrounding these Ethereum vials is a bunch of random corpses. One of these corpses belonged to one of the Requiem agents, Grigory Weaver. After finding these vials, Zakhaev takes them, leaves the basement, and then he is met with cops. In desperation, Zakhaev throws one of the vials, and it starts the massive outbreak that we play through. The CIA gets wind of this and creates Operation Deadbolt to investigate this outbreak. I would say that this is a pretty decent start to the story if it wasn't for one plot hole. Let's go back to this basement that the vials were in. Looking at the state of this room as well as the corpses surrounding it, these vials should have been here for months if not years. So my question here is, how did Zakhaev manage to find out about these vials and where they're located at? And how did he manage to find them so quickly and before anyone else? Because of the events of Cold War Zombies, I would assume that the military factions of America and Russia know pretty well how strong Ethereum is. So how did this fucker manage to get the vials before either of them? The reason I have a problem with this is because the story literally cannot exist without this plot point, and it makes no sense. But anyways, let's go back to the story. Operation Deadbolt Strike Team is asked to carry out numerous missions throughout this outbreak, which are the contracts that you do in the game. As the Strike Team is doing their missions, they eventually manage to decipher a message from Dr. Ava Jansen. Dr. Jansen was hired by Zakhaev to do Ethereum research for him, but after finding out about the outbreak that Zakhaev started, she wanted to defect to the CIA. This leads us to the first story mission, where you have to rescue Dr. Jansen from one of the Terminus bases. In this mission, you locate Dr. Jansen and defend her from both zombies and mercs as she deletes all of her research from the Terminus servers. Afterwards, you escort her to a friendly helicopter and exfil. In this mission's ending cutscene, Dr. Jansen is interrogated by Special Security Officer Selma Green. This scene makes me want to jump off a skyscraper and land on top of wall spikes. So Dr. Jansen explains that she was hired by Terminus to continue her research that she was doing on dimensional energy production, which was confiscated by the FBI. She then says that she had no idea that Zakhaev was a terrorist. Green calls her out on her bullshit and shows pictures of them being with each other. Not sure exactly how she managed to get those pictures, but that's not important. Defending herself, Jansen literally says,
I thought he was the CEO. I'm a physicist, not a mind reader. And I wouldn't have had to work for him or anyone if you assholes hadn't shut me down.
So you're telling me that this woman was hired by a private military company to continue her research that the FBI considered to be so dangerous that they had to raid her lab, confiscate her research, and fucking arrest her. And she didn't think to look up any information about this private military company or why they want her to continue her research? Woman, you do not have to be a mind reader to take precautions in situations like this. In this situation, the smart thing for the CIA to do is to not trust this dumbass and give her current research to someone else. But unfortunately, Green is as much of a dumbass as Jansen is and releases her. I'm sorry, What? How could you possibly think that she could be trusted after saying that dumb shit? I would be a lot more on board with this if she had a much better excuse, like Zakhaev threatened her or forced her to do research or something like that. But whatever, we have more dumb shit to go over. So Jansen makes a neutralizer for Operation Deadbolt and the strike team has to test it. This leads us into the second story mission where we have to test out this neutralizer. So we go into a Terminus post, destroy the anti-aircraft weapons in the post, and we escort the rover that has the neutralizer that was airdropped by Deadbolt. We take the neutralizer to some Ethereum crystals, detonate the thing, and the test is complete. We then cut to Jansen talking about how the test was a success, but the neutralizer needs to be stronger to be good against the vial that Zakhaev has. Jansen then suggests that she uses the research of Dr. Strauss, who is the head of energy research in Requiem. This should be easy since Requiem was part of the CIA, which naturally means that the CIA should have that research with them. But this story continues to amaze me by how terrible it is.
Zakhaev obtained research written by the expert on Ethereum enrichment.
So, would you care to explain to me how he managed to get that research? What, did he break into the CIA without anyone noticing? Did he have someone in the CIA get it for him? Did he make a wish with the Dragon Balls to get that research? Who knows? All you know is that he has it and you have to get it. Also, why is there only one copy of this research? How did nobody from the CIA notice that the research from a previous outbreak that would absolutely help them with this outbreak is missing? I could go on more about how stupid this plot hole is, but I think you get the picture. So we get the research from one of the Act 3 challenges, which is to raid a fortress and to exfil with it so Jansen can use it. Then we go to the third story mission where we go to Zakhaev's facility. In this mission, we destroy his Ethereum enrichment devices, then we activate the new amped up neutralizer. After activating the neutralizer, a massive worm just comes in out of nowhere. There's no build up to this, the worm just spawned in because it felt like it. So we kill the thing and then Jansen goes to the neutralizer and flips the switch, which causes a massive black hole to come in. She is slowly pulled into this black hole where we see the shadow of our new villain, the Entity. Jansen then screams into this black hole which puts it out, suggesting that she has powers of some kind, and Zakhaev manages to escape from this facility where he is effectively written out of the story. Yep, the main villain of the story completely disappears and is immediately replaced. If you're gonna write off Zakhaev, might as well get him captured so they can confirm that his weapon is neutralized, since, you know, it's the same weapon that started the outbreak. But whatever. Anyway, a massive energy spike happens in the red zone after that black hole sequence, and the strike team goes to investigate it, taking us to our first Act 4 mission. The mission goes like this. We go into the dark ether, blow up some obelisks, kill the worm again, and leave. I'm not sure exactly what that accomplishes, but it accomplishes something, I guess. In the end of the mission, we get this cutscene where the Entity is politely telling the strike team to fuck off, and then we get a scene of Jansen going schizo mode. I actually do like this cutscene as it shows how Jansen and the Entity are connected in a cool way, but unfortunately it goes downhill from here. Next Act 4 mission, you and Ravenov go to rescue Terminus soldiers from the Dark Ether, and after doing so, Terminus is written out of the story. This mission serves no purpose and is complete filler. You can literally skip this entire segment and no information of value will be lost. Next Act mission, Jansen goes into the Dark Ether to meet up with the Entity, so we go save her. In the end of the mission, we get a cutscene where Ravenov shows her a secret that he's been hiding all this time. He opens up a video that reveals that Jansen is actually the daughter of Samantha Maxis and Ravenov, who was supposed to be her caretaker. It's then established that Jansen has a connection to the Dark Ether due to her being Samantha's daughter. This connection is what birthed the Entity, which means that the Entity is essentially Dr. Jansen, but evil. This revelation makes her pissed at Ravenov, and Ravenov's defense is that he was forced to be a father without his consent since Requiem took DNA from both parents. Not sure exactly what that means, but that doesn't matter.
Please, you need to let me help you.
Help me. All you've done is lie.
Wait, but Ava!
Man, the animosity between these two characters should be really strong right now. Surely this will be explored later on in the story, right? She just gets over it in the next Act mission. Look, I don't know about you guys, but personally, in my own opinion, okay, if my father abandoned me, and then when I meet him, he tries his best to hide that he's my father, and then when I confront him about it, he literally says to my face that he never wanted to be my father, I would probably despise him for the rest of my life. But that could just be my own controversial opinion. So anyway, in the final act mission, we go face to face against Evil Jansen in a pretty awesome boss fight. The boss has a pretty diverse moveset and each of her attacks look pretty sick. My favorite thing about the fight is how it utilizes the parkour aspect of the Season 5 Rift to make a massive arena filled with platforms. And you evade all of her attacks by jumping from platform to platform. You're also not forced to go to the platform that is nearest to her to damage her. You can shoot her and do damage from any platform at any distance. Despite the issues that I talked about earlier with the story, I really do like this boss fight and I think it's a pretty cool way to end the story. Alright, there's the ending cutscene. After we free Jansen from Evil Jansen, we get a cutscene that is set 3 months after the fight. Jansen goes to a place called Liberty Falls that is set in West Virginia. She gets into a call with Ravenov and explains to him that being on vacation didn't work for her. Instead, she wants to explore Liberty Falls due to an outbreak that once happened there. As she's walking around the room, a figure pops out of the mirror, and as of this moment, people are speculating that this is the Shadow Man. So afterwards, she gets closer to the mirror, and then the Shadow Man literally shadows all over the place.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know. You gotta ask the fucking Shadow Man, I guess. I don't know.
Hey, Shadow Man. Hey,
actually,
Themis.
figure out. You know what? Just ask Jason Blundell or Craig Hughes.
Dude, the Shadow Man is such a fucking stupid name.
It is very stupid. This map was better off when it was just by itself, its own thing.
Shadow Man used the shadows.
Yeah, dude, it's...
He's shadowed all over the place.
And that's the end of Modern Warfare 3's story. Modern Warfare 3 Zombies' story might actually be one of the worst in all of Call of Duty and not just zombies. One of my biggest problems with the story, other than its plot, which is completely nonsensical and poorly paced, is the characters. Characters are the linchpin that holds the story together, and when you have bad characters, it's really hard to get invested into a story regardless of how big the stakes are. And in Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, the characters are just terrible. The entire cast, aside Dr. Jansen and Ravenov and maybe the Entity, are a bunch of one-dimensional caricatures that are so generic. And on top of being generic, they are so irrelevant to the story that they literally don't appear in gameplay. Like Zakhaev, the main villain of the first half of the story, all he does is he starts the outbreak and does nothing else. People don't feel triumph in a villain's defeat if they do nothing for the majority of the runtime. I'm fine with him not showing up a lot in the story, but I want him to do something important every single time he's on screen. Let's compare him with a villain that came out of COD 4's story, Khalid al-Assad. In the scene that he's introduced in, Khalid kills one of the presidents in the Middle East. Because of this incident, the Marines go and hunt him down in the capital city. The Marines keep pressing him and his forces for a few missions where they keep winning and winning. Each of these missions convey to the player that he's just a pushover. But then in the very last mission where you play as the Marines, this guy sets off a nuke. It's one of the most memorable moments in gaming history. It makes you remember the character despite him not being in the game all that much. I'm not saying that Zakhaev should have blown up a nuke in Urzikstan when you kill the worm or something like that, but I want him to be involved in the missions. I have the same problem with the characters that play alongside us. Sure, Ravenov might be in a few act missions, but all he does is just shoot the zombies around you and give orders. His involvement is so unnoticeable that I didn't even notice that he was in the Act 3 mission fighting the worm alongside me. Even in the final act mission, he does the exact same thing. He just shoots zombies and nothing else. Jansen, on the other hand, doesn't have that problem. She's always the focal point of every act mission she's in. She's the one that pulls the switch in the third story mission. She's the main objective in the third Act 4 mission. And she weakens the Entity's defenses in the final act mission. She's the only character that is heavily involved in the gameplay, which isn't enough. And as for the Entity, I think she had the potential to be a very interesting villain. Her main objective throughout the entire story is to connect with Dr. Jansen, but we never know why she wants to do so. It would have been interesting to flesh out the connection between them, and how that connection affected the Entity's life. But unfortunately, none of these things are fleshed out, and she just devolves into a less interesting version of Melina from Mortal Kombat 9. It is possible that this connection, and maybe the other characters as a whole, will be fleshed out a lot more in the next game, but honestly, the story of Modern Warfare 3 is so weak that I would rather it be forgotten and never mentioned again. Modern Warfare 3 Zombies, from its gameplay to its story, feels like it was made begrudgingly. It is a game that doesn't cater to its old fanbase, nor does it bother to supply the new fanbase with any meaningful content or story. It is a game that tries to trick you into playing it for more periods of time, rather than making high amounts of content that is so enjoyable that people want to play it more. It's a game that won't be remembered fondly by most, as it never respected their time or money. And as a result, it doesn't deserve their respect either.